In the previous chapter, I introduced economic geography as a subdiscipline of geography which uses as a geographical approach to study economies. I tried to highlight the fact that economic geographical approach of studying economies is very different from the one used by mainstream economics. We have also noticed that economic geographers see the economy through the prism of a space, place and a scale. What we have not covered in the previous lecture is to explore the questions of what the economy actually is. However, this is a fundamental question. Indeed, the way in which we define what the economy is influences our understanding of how the economy works and what can be done about it. Importantly, the definition of the economy and the economic has an important bearing on our understanding of the way economic processes work over a space across scales and in particular places. In other words, the way in which we define the economy has profound implications for our understanding of economic geographies. The approach to study economic geography can be divided into three categories. As I mentioned, the first one is known as the traditional approach. The second can be categorized as a philosophic approach, and the third one is the modern approach. These are the approaches which are common in geography and frequently used in economic geography. These are, the first one is regional approach, second is commodity or topical approach, and the third is principal approach. Let me explain you regional approach. The term region is very popular in geographical literature and refers to a suitable areal unit. For example, a climatic region and a natural region, an industrial region, an agricultural region, an administrative or political region, and so on. A region is having common geo-economic characteristics, a resource-based economic development, and to some extent similarities in cultural and demographic structure. Therefore, several geographers have chosen this regional approach in economic geography. An advantage of the regional approach is that it gives a better knowledge of different parts of a unit, their relationship to each other and to the unit as a whole. Now, let me explain you the commodity or topical approach. The approach provides a systematic description and interpretation of the word distribution pattern of commodity. For example, wheat, or an industry, for example, cotton textile industry, or a human occupation, for example, fishing. It analyzes the whole sequence of their development and catches them on their march to progression or retrogression. This topical or commodity approach is very popular. The systematic economic geography, if we choose this appellations, is the legitimate child of this very conception. And the third approach, as I mentioned, is the principles approach. In every sphere of human activity, certain fundamental truths or principles hold good. Indeed, they provide the rock foundations upon which varied and varying superstructures rest. The concept of economic geography are through permitted with the same spirit whether we talk of regional economic geography or systematic economic geography. Economic regions are based on certain fundamental principles, and similar is the case with extraction of minerals, for example, coal, iron ore or diamond, or the localization of industries, for example, metal fabricating or textile industries. So, at least 4 principles, viz. The principle of genomics relationship, the principle of optimum location, the principle of regional specialization, and the principle of genomic succession appear to be valid generalization under all conditions. That is why it seems to be a sound proposition if we propound certain fundamental principle in the discussion of genomic problems. This approach has two distinct advantages. Firstly, it provides an analytical method which promotes critical acumen, and secondly, it does away with the parrot learning or factual material. The 1990s research in economic geography may be categorized by three major philosophic approaches. These are positivism, structuralism, and third is humanism. So let me begin with positivism. Positivism employs the scientific method to interpret and understand issues in economic geography. The scientific approach is based on the empirically verifiable and commonly agreed upon evidence through replication of analytical results. It involves informed hypothesis testing leading to empirical generalization and law-like statements. GIS, Group Information System, is central to analytical and positivist approach to geography in general and with especially numerous applications in economic geography. The second categorization is structuralism. In economic geography, structuralism persists that what we see in the world does not reveal the cause of what we see. The structure of economic cannot be directly observed, and we should therefore develop ideas and theories that will help us understand what we see and experience. While there is no way to directly test such theories, we can debate about them to achieve better understanding. And the third categorization, as I mentioned, is known as humanism. It is a part of critique of positivism. Humanistic economic geographers object to both positivism and structuralism. On the basis of these approaches, they viewed that people as responding mechanically to spatial and structural forces. In economic geography, three approaches have been developed during last 3 decades that can be considered as modern approaches. These are, the first one is system analysis, the second one is behavioral approach, and the third one is institutional approach. So let me explain you the system analysis. A system is a set of identified elements so related that together they form a complex whole. System analysis is an approach or methodology rather than a philosophy or a scientific paradigm. Economic geographers utilize system approach in order to better understand the component elements of some part of reality and the relations between them. The use of such a conception stresses the study of the whole as of the parts. Thus, the word economy can be regarded as a set of interlocking parts and subsystems. Now, after that, let me discuss about the behavioral approach. Incorporation of behavioral science outlook in geography is known as behavioralism. In economic geography, behavioral approach now has become very common. Economic geographers study the overall result of economically oriented behavior as they appear in the landscape. In economic geography, the study of decision-making processes is an important aspect. The approaches are regional approach, systematic or commodity approach, and the activity approach. And the fourth one is known as principal approach. Regional approach. This is a common method to economic geography in which the economies of various geographical regions with a country, a continent, or the world as a whole is studied. As per a geographer, the term region is unquestionably one of the catchphrases of our day among both popular and scholarly authors. We use the term region to refer to an appropriate areal unit that exhibits some degree of uniformity. It is the 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 of geography. Economic geographer Taylor, he correctly observes that the concept of a region as well as integrated whole defined by first class access to and from the regional capital and well balanced in terms of resources, economic development, commerce, cultural and occupations has not yet spread beyond the ranks of geographers and planners. It should be stressed that unquestionably an economic geographical region does not always correspond to geopolitical entities. However, for the sake of convenience, economic geographers have frequently used political units to study regional geo-economic conditions. The primary advantage of the regional method is that it provides a more comprehensive understanding of many components of a unit, their relationship with one another and with unit as a whole. This is true regardless of whether the unit is country, a continent or the entire globe. So now let me explain you systematic or commodity approach. This method provides a systematic description and explanation of distributional pattern of certain resources or commodities. For example, industries, cotton textile industries, that it analyzes the entire sequence of their growth and detects them as the progress or regress. This methodological or commodity based approach is quite popular. And the third approach is activity based approach. This approach tries to categorize men's fundamental economic activity into three appropriate categories, that is primary, secondary and tertiary. You may be knowing that agriculture, forestry, fishing, hunting, collecting and mining are all primary activities. These functions are practically inextricably linked to nature. The secondary activities are those that are dependent on the conversion of primary goods into more useful ones. So, secondary activities encompasses all disciplines of manufacturing, and tertiary activities are born out of the need to connect basic and secondary activities such as transportation and commerce. So, let me explain you a few more issues related to principle based approach. In this method, generalization about man and his environment are established on the basis of an examination of facts at a particular point in time. We frequently assume as a general rule that plains encourage settlement, mountains resist it, or that deserts are zone of solitude. Such broad strokes are frequently determinantal. Nonetheless, this method is significant in and of itself. It improves the clarity of reasoning and depth of analysis. It is extremely difficult to choose one of the four major approaches as I explained you and rely on it to evaluate a country's economic situation. Regional approaches are largely reliant on the regional dimensions of economic geography. They do not take into account regional variety of development or the relative significance of various sectors of commodities. Its facts should be organized in a systematic manner. It should rationally explain current situation in accordance with existing laws. It should forecast future development or pave the path for discovery of new laws. This should be made with some degree of correctness, not in an absolute or flawless sense. The Marxist economic perspective derives from the writing of Karl Marx and Engels, two late 19th century German thinkers. Karl Marx, like Adam Smith, who was concerned in the subject of how wealth is generated in the economy and dispersed among society's members. Nevertheless, in sharp contrast to situation in which both parties benefit, Marx, as Smith referred to, saw that wealth will gradually concentrate in the hands of the few. How is this so? Marx developed his labor theory of value in order to address these challenges. Workers, on the other hand, do not own the means of production, and their sole means of subsistence is via the sale of their own labor or as independent contractors. Marxists refer to this as the labor force, to capitalists. Thus, in a capitalist market economy, labor itself becomes a commodity. Labor power can be purchased and sold just like any other commodity. Thus, workers sell their labor and earn compensation for their efforts, which appear to be acceptable on the surface. Notably, Marx believed that capitalist system is unsustainable in long term, since the growing contradiction would ultimately approach a tipping point at which the system will collapse. Accordance with Marx's revolution will occur in the most advanced capitalist nations, where the conflicts between the labor and capital are more pronounced. Capitalism's demise will open the way for a new social or economic order. Throughout a social revolution led by working class, Marx stated relatively little about the operation of such new system. To be free of exploitation, however, a system must eliminate both private property and class relations based on the property rights. While Marxism offers a compelling account of how the economy works, it is also raises a number of critical concerns. Indeed, the economy does not always function, and Marx anticipated that the socialist revolution has thus far been unable to materialize in most advanced capitalist countries. Thus, one of the key problems is how we can account for the capitalism system survival in face of its difficulties. Economic geography's relevance and renewal have been a response to societal demands and pressing issues. Since the 1990s, at least 4 topics have gained essential importance. The first one is globalization. Social debates revolve around globalization's role as a creator or a destroyer of employment, a source of income, and the effects of market liberalization. These are political problems that influence society selection and involve the qualitative and quantitative assessment of globalization's impact. Economic geography is concerned with diversity of spatial phenomena. On the other hand, globalization is a geographical phenomena characterized by scale shift, the opening of a space, the removal of impediments, and the opacity of a space. If economics has answered to offer a theoretical level within the framework of a realistic epistemology, in which we are more concerned with the world as it is than with the world as it should be, geographers have a unique position to address what makes globalization unique and its consequences particularly spatial. There has been widespread anxiety which has increased in intensity in aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. Now, second issue is inequalities in development. In 1970s, there was a critical topic on the political and social agenda. We were discussing third world countries at that time. In the 1950s and 1960s, it became clear that decolonization did not result in the former colonies' economic recovery. There were theories such as Rostov that predicts the sequential phases necessary to gain development, industry, and expansion, but this did not occur. There is no definitive solution to the topic of whether globalization is beneficial or a harmful phenomena. There is also no response to disparity in the development. There is no broad consensus. There were several arguments in 1970s, but we now agreed that this existed and there is no longer any need to offer an expansion. It is not self-evident that such significant development disparities exist between countries. Now, the third issue which I would like to discuss is the geographic logics of production. In the Fordist age of mass production, mass consumption, and standardized goods, spatial logics are fairly simple to comprehend, especially when combined with Weber's model, which explains how a factory would situate itself to minimize transportation cost. These spatial logics of production shifted with the establishment of post-Fordist modes of production in 1980s, when logistical, stock and just-in-time flow concerns became increasingly significant. With the question of plants' location, a new style of controlling production was introduced during a wave of globalization. Now, the fourth and the last issue which I would like to discuss is environmental risk, resources and sustainable development. In the 1970s, with the formation of Club of Rome, worries began to permeate into the public consciousness. Natural resources, natural hazards, population and the environment have all gained increased relevance as a result of the concept of sustainable development. This is not just a matter of time allocation, but also of space allocation. Since the 1990s, there has been a sense that economic geography has lost its significance in some societal issue. Now, I hope that by the end of this chapter, you should be able to explain why the concept of the economy is problematic and contentious. Recognize that different perspectives of the economy have profound implications for theoretical approaches in economic geography. Describe the key theoretical approaches in economic geography. And besides that, I also explain different social and economic issues that are relevant in current context.